Hi everybody, thank you for joining me today. This is Dr. Sarah. You're on the Break Free Medicine page. Today I'm going to be discussing another essential oil for mental health, specifically in the area of memory, cognition, and brain support. So we're going to be appreciating the wisdom of the sages today, if you catch my drift. Now this is the 5th video in my series on using natural approaches to support mental health. It continues with the theme of focusing on clinically validated essential oils. I went over the first oil, lavender essential oil, in the last video and discussed all its benefits for soothing the brain, calming the body, and how it's been clinically validated in human studies for anxiety prevention. So if you missed any of the topics that I've already discussed and want to learn more, make sure you check out the link that I provide on my homepage. But now let's get into today's topic, sage oil. Now first I'm going to do a little exploration on the compounds, the biochemistry, but you'll see why this is necessary and how it translates to its actions in various studies. So hang in there with me. Then we'll look at some of the human trials using sage oil. By the time I'm done, I think you'll agree that sage oil was well named because of its impact on memory, cognition, and the brain. Okay, so there are over 900 species of sage, salvia, in the mint family. So we have our work cut out for us. So let's get started. Totally kidding. I'm going to go over 2 of the most common that you're most likely to see and find in your essential oil bottle. This is common sage, Salvia officinalis, and Spanish sage, Salvia lavendulifolia. Now, although they share similar names, there are some differences in their chemical makeup. And remember that even within the same species, somebody could be holding a Spanish sage from one manufacturer and a Spanish sage from another manufacturer, and there could be different percentages of the compounds found in Spanish sage in both of their bottles. Furthermore, they could vary based on the plant's harvesting time, the location, and the time of year from the same manufacturer. So keep that in mind. This is called the chemotype of the essential oil, which I've reviewed in detail in the past. So that is the most predominant molecule that you're going to find in your essential oil bottle. That being said, let's look at some of the most common percentages in sage, common sage, and Spanish sage specifically. So thujine is a trace constituent in Spanish sage. Now, thujine got a lot of attention for its toxic effects, and I did a whole review on that. It's really just the isolate, and even though it's in higher percentage in common sage, it's only 2 to 5% of the monoterpenes that there's only an overall total of 2 to 5% of monoterpenes in common sage, and of that, 30 to 65% of those monoterpenes are thujine. So it's a really low dose, and you're in the synergy of the whole essential oil. Same can be said for camphor, which is a little bit higher in Spanish sage. Okay, that's about 30%. It also has 1,8-phenol, which we heard about in a previous video on Melaleuca ericofolia, which is great for some of the benefits to the immune system and respiratory system. It also has alpha and beta pinene and boronol acetate. Now, if you look at a review of studies, which goes over, remember, a review of studies is a really good place to start, especially if they do a meta-analysis review. This was just a review, but it did report on different sage oils, and the author said that the compounds of camphor, alpha-thujine, beta-thujine, these are different variants of the same compound, and 1,8-phenol were the most important active constituents that could be used in sage oil for its effects. I'm not sure I agree with that. And there was an in vitro study with researchers who verified my kind of caveats with that conclusion. What they did was they examined different combinations of the compounds present in Spanish sage. They looked at different ratios to determine what are the ones that are most responsible for its role in memory enhancement. They analyzed these different ratios to look for whether they would inhibit the mechanism of action, whether it would add to the mechanism of action or cancel out the mechanism of action. What they found is a whole hodgepodge and basically concluded that it was the synergy of the essential oil that itself, not the individual specific ratios that might be related to the brain enhancing effects. So that's pretty cool. Now, what does this have to do with how we are going to use sage oil? Well, let's take a look at the fact that now we know a mechanism of action. We know what some of the most major compounds that we want found in our Spanish sage or common sage oil. How does this translate to human trials? Because these studies actually use Spanish sage and common sage with these caveats in mind that they're going to have these synergy of active compounds. Now, one study highlighted this application of combining the known mechanism of action, which is an action on this enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. Now, that is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, which is an important neurotransmitter that you want in your brain to support memory enhancement. So if you can stop its breakdown, you'll have more of this acetylcholine, this memory enhancement neurotransmitter in your brain. So that's what a lot of the Alzheimer's drugs mechanism of actions work on. What they did is they found an improvement in cognition for the 36 subjects that they tested, and they did an oral ingestion actually of 0.5 milliliters, which is about, depending on the thickness of the oil, probably about 6 to 10 drops, but I'll do the math for you on that later. And so basically what they did is they combined this known mechanism action and verified with cognitive function tests that, yeah, it did enhance memory in people, and this is probably how it did it. So see how they combined those two things, which is pretty cool. Now, that was in healthy volunteers. They also did a pilot study in Alzheimer's patients. It was a small study, 11 patients. The researchers, again, verified the mechanism of actions in Petri dishes, and then they did a series of tests, and they found that it reduced neuropsychiatric symptoms and improved attention in these dementia patients. And they used about 0.05 milliliters, which is about 1 drop, depending on the thickness of the oil, as their dosage. There have been several other human studies that reported the benefit of sage and common sage and Spanish sage in small trials for memory, attention, and cognition, and I provide a chart for that on my homepage. I'm going to go into more details on some of the studies, the practical applications, and its validated safety in an upcoming article, a little bit more on dosaging as well. And I'll discuss the implications of having an essential oil that can act positively on memory for both healthy volunteers and in those struggling with neuropsychiatric disorders and dementia. So that's pretty cool. You'll want to stay tuned for this next video. The major takeaways for today that I wanted to share with you guys is that you want to make sure you trust your manufacturer to have all the synergistic compounds found in your sage essential oil bottle that has been verified in the studies. And you probably either want to grab Spanish sage or common sage oil specifically for its brain benefits, so check your label. And feel free to enjoy diffusing this oil for now or inhaling it, because we know that that's one of the most effective and safest way to get a good quality essential oil into your brain and help benefit your mood. And I'll discuss more applications with you next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any feedback, comments, constructive criticism, please be sure to make sure you leave your comment, and I will review that. And I will see you in my next video. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.